Hello, Olive.
Hi, Alvin.
You're looking superb for a Friday. Very
Thank
superb.
you. Good to see you. You're looking superb too, form on a Friday.
You know, when it is a lead event, you have to show up. It's
I
all
know,
about
I know.
East Africa and our leadership and the governance that we have.
Exactly.
And the agenda we have with LEAD, which is a great agenda for this part of the world.
It's exactly, and we have to position LEAD accordingly. When we say leadership, it's leadership in both practice and action.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I think we are waiting for
Since 1946, Uganda Breweries has passionately brought Ugandans together in the wonderful spirit of progress and celebration. A shared masterpiece of heritage produced by the soil and sustained by our belief in a better tomorrow. From creating the first taste truly cherished by Uganda, to changing with the times and bringing you many firsts. From giving nature millions of reasons to smile, to being there for a million joyful moments that we've all shared in. From championing the spirit of hope when it mattered the most, to supporting the champions who continue to inspire us. We invite you to take a front row seat in our story, 75 years in the making. A journey that without you would have never been worth undertaking. A journey of excellence and innovation, not created by any one individual, but a journey brewed by Uganda.
It doesn't matter where we are. Or what we have. We keep the good times flowing. Be it outdoors,
that's how we do it.
Or even in the wild. We bring it wherever we go because space doesn't determine our expression. Our moments are golden, timeless, and enjoyed in Mpola Mpola. Because Mpola Enjoyments is about our crew, our vibe, and our beer. Mpola Enjoyments. It's a Bell Lager thing.
Very welcome to today's session on effective strategy implementation and alignment within a group context with Mr. Alvin Mbugwa. My name is Ivan Kalema from the League of East African Directors, and I welcome you all from wherever you are. We've got members and participants in Kampala, Nairobi, Johannesburg, and other places of Africa and the world joining us this afternoon. We are so privileged to have all of you, and I look forward, and I believe that we're going to have a very powerful session this afternoon with our speaker. Welcome you all in your different capacities, all protocol observed. Before I invite the moderator of this session this afternoon, I want to congratulate the board and management of the League of East African Directors on the 2nd anniversary. League was launched on the 2nd of May. So Gertrude Karugaba, the chair, and the board, I congratulate you on that milestone. I also want to congratulate our members, recent appointments, Mrs. Rachel Dumba, who was appointed to the board of Uganda Breweries Limited. Mr. Sam Muntulume was appointed to TIDA Uganda. Congratulations and best wishes to in your new challenges and responsibilities. Right away, I want to introduce our panel, our moderator, Olive. Permit me to introduce our moderator this afternoon, Mrs. Olive Birunjulumonia. Olive is strategic and marketing communications professional with leadership experience at both management and board level that spans over 20 years in private, public, and non-profit sectors. She's a country director of Source Children's Villages Uganda, offering leadership to over 400 members of staff. She's an Africa Board Fellow ABF and a certified balanced scorecard champion. Marketeer, MBA from Esami, amongst others, including the Marketing Driving Forces course from the London School of Business. She has also got experience and specialized training in the industries of pension, social security, and also aviation at both regulatory oversight, amongst others. She oversaw the rebranding and repositioning of the National Security Fund, NSSF, positioning of Nile Special, and club beer brands of Nile Breweries, managed the communication and public relations of NSSF and Nile Breweries Limited. She has also worked as a professional writer, specializing as a news reporter, publishing several articles in leading newspapers in Uganda and other parts of East Africa, though currently she publishes articles on personal branding. She has also served on numerous boards over the years, and she currently serves as the chairperson of Finca Uganda. You're very welcome, Olive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for that beautiful introduction. I want to warmly welcome you all, our members who have logged in. I've seen several CEOs, heads of departments, managers at different levels who have logged in into this webinar. And before I go into the webinar, I just want to extend appreciation to join you, Ivan, to say thank you to the board of LEAD, especially the chair, Gertrude, for guiding us very well and for enabling us to continue getting such beautiful webinars that empower us and share knowledge and experience with one another. Allow me also to extend my appreciation to Mr. Japheth Kato, the chairman of the board of directors of Uganda Breweries Limited, for enabling us to find Alvin Mbugua, the managing director, who is going to be speaking to us. So I want to thank you very much for that. Just to break the beginning, I think today's topic is a very beautiful topic: effective strategy implementation and alignment within a group context. Many of you who have been following the arguments on which is important: strategy implementation, strategy formulation. And at one time, I remember about 5 years ago, somebody asked the question and said, if implementation of strategy was more important than strategy formulation, why is it that boards, CEOs arrange for boards to participate in strategy formulation for 2 days, 5 days, but we don't see them, we don't feel them when it comes to implementation? So there have been a lot of arguments, a lot of debates, a lot of questions. Where do you place your budget? Which is more important? So today, I think we are blessed to have a very, very experienced man, Alvin Mbugua, and I'll just take you through his profile quickly. Ivan, let me get the profile screened. Alvin, I can start off by saying Alvin is Salongo. I'm sure sometimes we see him dressed in this and positioning this beer, but he's a Salongo, and you know what Salongo means. Alvin Mbugua is the managing director of Uganda Breweries Limited, which is a subsidiary of the East African Breweries Limited and part of the Diageo Group. He's a holder of a bachelor's degree in geospatial engineering, a master's degree of commerce in development finance, and a certified member of the Association of the Chartered and Certified Accountants, ACCA, and the Institute for the Management of Information System, IMS. So you can see he picks from different vast experience. He's a seasoned executive with vast experience cutting across 17 countries in organizations such as Shell, Maersk Group, and Diageo. So with that experience, 17 countries, all ears are out to listen. He's passionate about and has expertise in change management, organizational transformation, corporate governance, risk management, operation analysis, financial reporting, strategy, systems consulting, customer value chain analysis, and organizational leadership. Alvin is a member of the Presidential Investors Roundtable in the area of agriculture subsector in Uganda and sits on the boards of Uganda Breweries Limited and AIESEC, I think ISEC, one of those organizations that we know. He's an avid reader and a mountaineer, and Alvin is married with 3 children. So ladies and gentlemen, from this profile that we see, we have an all-round leader with a vast experience who has accepted to come in this afternoon and share with us on the topic of effective strategy implementation and aligning within a group context. So as we all debate in our organizations and try to match and see how we can implement, we welcome you warmly, Alvin, and I'll ask you to take the stage. Alvin will present for about 40 minutes, and then thereafter we'll have questions. Feel free to send in your questions through the chat box. Send them in. I've already received some questions from some of you that you sent through the whole of last week, showing that the interest is building, and very interesting questions that I'll be able to read after Alvin has presented. So I encourage you to send in as many questions that you have. Send those issues that have been burning in your boardrooms or in management, and let's see how we get in there. So welcome, Alvin. Take the floor and take us through this important topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Olive, and a real pleasure to be sharing this podium with you today. Allow me first to go through all the protocols as we celebrate this second year of LEAD. I really first want to start by thanking the chair of LEAD, Mrs. Gertrude Karugaba, and the officials and members of LEAD, some of whom are my own board chairman, Mr. Japheth Kato, who actually extended his hand to invite me on this very great platform. But other members and officials, not members, it is really, really great to be sharing this platform with you today and having this opportunity to just share briefly what my last 20 years have been about across Africa in implementing strategy with various entities, as you saw, in 3 different groups: in the oil and gas sector, in logistics and value chain management, and more recently, the last 8 years within the consumer goods space. Allow me also to really thank Olive, the moderator, and Ivan, who've done all the background work to set this up today and really ensure that we can still be able to converse, engage, learn from each other, even in these COVID times. And to all other invited guests, I know I can't go through the whole list, but I was made aware that there's quite a long list of corporates and NGOs, leaders, both at a board level and within the C-suite, dialing in for this very, very important subject for the day. So good afternoon to all of you. And I really look forward to a very authentic, energized, and intentional conversation as we unpack this subject today around strategy and effective implementation of the same within a group context. As I bring it up, I would really want to talk and start off with the softer side of who I am as an individual. I always believe that such forums are an opportunity, and I can see all of you did your homework, not to be called out as a solongo, but also to understand the speaker a bit more before really going into the subject of the day around effective strategy, implementation, and alignment within a group context. Let me know as the slides change, they take time, but bear with me. So that's me, and this is really starting out with a softer side to who I am. On one side, you can see that I'm planting a tree, and I'm planting a tree with the next generation. And, you know, I'm really all about three things. I'm extremely passionate about the environment. I think it's the one thing that we hand over to the next generation. And while we're on this planet, we have a huge responsibility in ensuring we pass over the environment better than we found it. Also very extremely passionate about sub-Saharan Africa. The countries marked in red is where I've worked in the last few years. There are about 6 countries while serving wider regional markets. So a bit of West Africa, a bit of East Africa, and a long time in Southern Africa. The third thing I'm really passionate about, and that takes us to the picture right at the bottom, is the youth. Africa is truly blessed to have close to 70% of its own population being below the age of 30 years. And for many, that proves and comes out as a headache. But for me and where I see it as an opportunity, because in the next 20 to 30 years, Africa will have what most continents don't have, an energized, dynamic workforce that can truly be the edge that transforms us into middle income, into a different playing field. But how we take care of that dividend, the kind of values we inject into that next set of young men and women coming up will determine the Africa we get as we close this century. So extremely passionate about working with young people, and that's why I serve on the ISEC board, but also other enterprises on a voluntary basis, because I really believe we should all spend so much time, how much we were given, passing it on to the next generation. And then on the side there is all about working in teams. I thrive in teams. I'm not a solo player, whether it's playing a sport, whether it's working within an organization. I really enjoy bringing together diverse individuals, working as a normal team member and delivering great outcomes. I really believe that, you know, real growth will come from, you know, what we do together and how you generate hive mindsets to capitalize on items and deliver things greater than yourself that really outlast you. And at the corner there is a picture of me recently conquering Mount Rwenzori at the Margarita Peak. What a view, what a glacier, what a beautiful country we have in Uganda. So that's me in a snapshot, extremely passionate about so many things. And it's really all around the environment, the youth, and Africa. So before I jump into the subject of the day, I really want to cover two subjects very clearly. The subject of the day speaks to very clearly strategy implementation within the context of a group. Now, for many of you dialing in, you may not be in a group context. For some of you, you really understand what that means. But I really wanted to shed some context before going to the subject matter. And the first piece here talks to, for example, UBL. What are our internal dynamics? What are the pieces, what stakeholder sets do we need to deal with on a day-to-day as we execute on our business mandate? And in there, you can see that we have, for the first branch, we have the parent company, that is Diageo. We also have Diageo Africa, which is like a regional hub. And then you have East African breweries, who are exactly our direct owners and parent company. They have their vision, they have their mission, they have their intentions. And we must take that at any given time and try and understand it, unpack it, and make very deliberate choices about where they are headed versus where we are headed as Uganda Breweries Limited. We also have our export partners. Remember, we have close to 200 individual brand SKUs. Some of it we manufacture in Uganda, which is amazing as we grow our Bubu agenda and our local content agenda. But a very big chunk of it, be it Scotch,
Have we lost you, Alvin? Hello, Ivan. Can you hear Alvin presenting?
No, I can't hear him. We'll try to get him. We'll try to
please.
get him through. He's got a backup.
He's got
David,
okay. Okay.
David.
So as they get Alvin, I think yeah, let's give him time to connect, and then we will proceed. We could also play, I think we have an ad. Yeah, Alvin is back. Yes, Alvin is back. Yeah, Alvin, we had lost you, but we'll begin from where you had stopped. Alvin, can you hear me? I think you're muted. Alvin, I think you're muted. Alvin, you're muted. Please unmute.
All right, I'm now back. Not to
Okay,
worry.
super.
Let me know where we last left.
Yeah, please unmute, and then we can. You were still taking us through the context, and you were on the topic of the 200 brands that are manufactured in different areas, so we can catch up from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So essentially, we have a complex set of partners, both import and export.
Yeah, we've still lost Alvin. I'll ask Ivan, you could play some of the adverts from okay. We'll keep, yeah. So Alvin, we had lost you once again. Just when we started to enjoy. So please, yeah, we hope.
All right, I'm going for it, don't worry.
Thanks.
So I passionately spoke about the complex set of partners, both import and export, who are Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Netherlands, Scotland, where we do import some brands, but we also largely make quite a set of brands as we drive our local Bubu agenda in this part of the world. So there is definitely partners we deal with and stakeholders that deal with in extending this very important part. The next thing I want to talk about is about global functions as another internal dynamic. Remember, we rely on shared services to do some of our transactions. We rely on best practice sharing from other functions that are global to Diageo, and we borrow a lot. Now, those platforms exist in the form of what we call global functions, and we borrow quite a bit in terms of resources, systems, tools to advance our own cause. And then you have your regulators, be it the CMA, be it URA, be it the stock exchange. So you can imagine as an entity, even as we talk about effective strategy implementation, you have to take cognizance of all the interests of all the stakeholders, yes, within the marketplace that you operate, and ensure that you're meeting their needs and they too are meeting your needs as you execute on your strategy mandate. So when we talk group, I want us to also expand that a bit to not just beyond, not just within the lens of a parent company or your owner, but to each of these players. You also have industry affiliations, UMA, PSFU, Alcohol Association. All these players, all these segments have a great importance to how well you drive your strategy and implement it effectively. The second thing I want to share so humbly is I want to talk to our value chain. And if you look at our value chain, essentially from the start, we have farmers, we have processors, we have transporters, we have importers, agencies, you name it, including our own very own URA, a great partner, warehouses, distributors, stockists, outlets. And if you look at an entity such as Uganda Breweries, you realize that really Uganda Breweries is in service of Ugandans, is in service of Uganda, because 93% of the ecosystem that we build is built for Uganda, for Ugandan entities, for Ugandan partners, and even for the shareholders, who the shareholders are also Ugandan. Only 7% really does come through to them at the end of the day in terms of what comes to their pockets. But even that 7% shareholders, they too convert into consumers and they still spend back into that ecosystem. So when you look at an entity as Uganda Breweries, don't just think about, oh, the profits that are coming in or what is the top line growth. Think about the ecosystem and the idea that actually, if you were to remove Uganda Breweries from the scenery, it is the 93% of the ecosystem that would really hurt even more than the shareholders. And therefore, for us, as we exist in this time and age, how we service our ecosystem, the 93%, how we partner with them, how we drive value in their world, how they are part of our strategy and end-to-end thinking, then becomes a very paramount point to our existence, to our sustainability. Because in entrenching ourselves socially, we then advance our strategy. In understanding our value chain, we become better. And I know for most of us, as we've gone through the last 14 months, for some of us, we had strategies where we were not too entrenched in our ecosystem. For some of us, we had strategies that didn't have the right flexibility and agility to connect with the various components as I've shared in this value chain. And for some of us, we've realized that we have cracks in particular elements of our value chain, and that has hampered how effectively we've been in this global pandemic season. But for those of us as entities who are well entrenched in working very closely with our various partners to our value chain, whatever the industry you might be, you have somehow thrived, you have somehow bounced back. Whether you had a very close relationship with a bank and they told you, listen, we know your business very well, we'll defy your loan, this is how we'll work on it. Or whether it was about shops that had to borrow on credit, but because you had a good relationship with that value chain, they said, listen, we will give you, we will stock your product X and support you, and we don't expect payback by this time. Or if it was your farmers who you took up their cereals, even if your demand had gone down because there was a relationship. The proximity of our value chain, understanding our value chain and our proximity to our value chain is a huge competitive advantage in just executing strategy. Now, so let me come to the topic of the day, because I wanted to kick off with that overall context. One, What are the internal dynamics for an entity like Uganda Breweries? And I know many other listeners on the call are reflecting on the same points. That's number one. Number two, though, what's your visibility to your value chain of the industry you are in and their contribution, and how close are you to that value chain? Because that determines your existence and sustenance. So the topic of today, I want to really unpack it from 3 or 4 parts. The first piece, I'll walk very quickly around what is strategy and what is not strategy. And then I'll move on to talk about the elements that derail us around strategy, but also the elements that can enable us around strategy within a group context. And as I go along, I will share some examples. And then I'll close off with a story, and that should allow us to go into an open mic session and field a few questions today. So the first piece for me, and I had you, Olive, talking and saying, you normally go for board sessions with the management and you articulate a strategy 3, 4, 5 days, and you wonder why strategy doesn't happen or doesn't get done. I want to first start by demystifying that. Strategy is not 3, 4 days away with your board. Strategy is not a annual planning cycle. Strategy is not ideas that you put together in a basket to say, we think that can be articulated. For many of us, once we formulate strategy, we think we've done strategy. Actually, strategy without an implementation plan is not complete. It is purely an ideology. And therefore, I want to spend a few minutes just demystifying what strategy is as you go into this subject today around effective strategy implementation and alignment within a group setting. So the first thing I want to demystify, strategy is not a vision or mission statement. It is not a goal or budget or business plan. It is not even performance gaps coming out of or market gaps coming out of data analytics. Neither is it financial projections. I know many of us sit back and say, we want to become X% size of a business by this year, and therefore these are the projections, that's our strategy. It is not. Neither is it an external consultant's report. Yeah, you know, many of us get the McKinseys and other professional service firms to come in and really speak to what you'd call, what are the gaps within the company. That is not strategy. Neither is strategy benchmarking against competition. Because for many of us, we interplay a lot of the first 6 statements there are strategy. You have someone who's a strategy, says, I want to be the leading consumer goods company in Uganda. That's a vision. What's the strategy? I have a plan to become 30% of the market by XYZ. What's the strategy? Oh, we are seeing gaps in the market. All those notions are not strategy. Strategy, and this is speaking from a very wide array, is defining unique positions, making clear trade-offs, and tightening the organizational fit internally to execute a particular market position. So even if you discovered a market gap, you need to resource for it. You need to align for it. You need to make clear priorities internally to align to that. And then you need to resource for it internally to create the right fit to execute that position. It is about building defenses against competitive forces to protect a particular position. It is about choices and decisions used to guide a company to greater success. Choices and decisions to guide a company to greater success. It is about the logic that drives your action. Why? The why behind the why behind the why of why you're doing a particular action. That starts to unpack itself as strategy and not the above. So as we unpack this subject, let's reflect on some of those statements, but on the bottom half that speaks to what strategy really is. So I like sharing this screen, and I like talking to a lot of activity. Is not strategy. Tactics is not strategy. Organizational effectiveness is not strategy. It's good. It's important to be able to execute well, but it's not strategy. Again, borrowing from what I've just gone through, it's the logic that drives the actions. It's your choices and decisions to guide a company to greater success. It is defining those unique positions, making clear trade-offs, tightening fit, yes, and executing those positions. Very, very important. The next dilemma and example I want to really share with you is, here is a very good example of, Uganda breweries. We have a parent called Diageo, and their identity is to position Guinness as the most rewarding and distinctive beer globally. It has particular pillars, and you can see where the objective sits in the consumer. Their strategic pillar is to drive mental availability, that's through visibility, introduce new brands, that's through innovation, and drive physical availability. Now, the combination of mental availability, innovation, physical availability is what starts to drive itself as a strategy. But remember, that is the global position. In Uganda breweries, I am also making Guinness. How will I translate mental availability? How will I translate innovation? How will I translate physical availability and rate of sale? Now that starts to be the conversation of how do you execute strategy within a group context where they are driving their own vision, they are driving their own business objective, they have their own consumer goal lockup, and they have their particular pillars that they are working through as what they would like to see you do. So I come in, I borrow the same house as Uganda Breweries, but I say, I want Guinness to be positioned as the most rewarding and distinctive beer brand in Uganda. But my conversation is different. My pillars are different. My pillars are about sustainability. Do I have the barley, the cereals, to be able to manufacture and make Guinness locally? Because that's the only way I'll make it distinctive and rewarding to Uganda as I drive NDP3 and Bubu. Do I have the capacity? Do I have a packaging line? Do I have the competency within my ecosystem and my teams to manufacture Guinness consistently to the high quality to ensure that it is most rewarding, distinctive beer in Uganda? However, how do I also connect to the consumer set of the day? What are the platforms by which Guinness resonates with the culture of being Ugandan? We have the English Premier League, yes, and we have various, I know we are Arsenal country, but we have various players in that regard. How then do I take those cultural nuggets to ensure that becomes the way by which I grow physical availability and rate of sale when you saw ROS? So there's still a piece of work to be done between moving from that global context that I just shared around Guinness to delivering this local context in delivering strategy and ensuring that you lock in sustainability through your local sourcing agenda, capacity through your practices internally to deliver that beer, and then culturally through your consumer set to understand and appreciate what makes Guinness truly distinctive. And that is just a simple example. So what we'll spend the next 20 minutes unpacking is how you move from that global picture to this local picture and still are able to achieve the same thing as the group, to have the most rewarding and distinctive beer in whatever geographical place you play from both a Diageo lens and a Uganda Breweries lens. So I want to start off by unpacking a few things. Strategy formulation versus strategy implementation. It's very clear to note, and you can read this in as many theses and papers as you come across, that only 9 out of 10 companies fail to execute strategy effectively. Only 1 in 10 ever succeed. And it's because the pitfalls to implementation are actually the issue. And it's never the strategy formulation. And where does this tend to collapse? In the vision, for starters. Only 5% of employees ever get what the vision is about, what corporate strategy is about. It gets translated over broken telephone, and by the time it gets to the shop floor, it's something else. It's let's produce X versus the target of Y. And how do you get to simplify and unpack the message of what you're trying to do from a vision lens and a corporate strategy lens to various layers of the organization so that they can unlearn and learn what is relevant for them to execute and still be in service of strategy and where you're headed. Only 25% of managers have strategy-based incentives. This is another bigger piece, and it speaks to how well we are aligned We all come from organizations where you do annual planning, half-year planning, but how many of our goals really speak to the individual business objectives that we are in service of, the bigger picture? And we realize sometimes as we roll over our goals, we are very disconnected towards the bigger picture. And how do we connect every single employee towards what is the corporate strategy and to them playing their part? I just shared something around sustainability, which means within Uganda breweries, the agriculture team guaranteeing that we have the cereals enough to produce the Guinness we need to produce. They are being part of strategy. How do you make them understand that? Within the supply organization, them being able to produce various beers and brands, Alvaro, soft drinks, etc., them being able to guarantee that they are being then part of strategy. How do you make their goals aligned to that role? And then our marketing teams and our sales teams, as they execute in line with the culture of the consumer and connect to what are the passion points of the consumer, be it the English Premier League, be it night football, be it Uganda Soccer League. How do we bring those passion points in line with our cultural set to drive our brands in those consumption spaces? So quite a bit to be done in that space around management and ensuring that their incentives are linked to strategy. Only 60% of organizations tie their budget to their strategy. I was in a session yesterday and someone spoke about an example of how they went for a 3-day excursion on strategy. And as we were finishing the meeting, the CFO said, oh, by the way, we are done with the budgets for next year. I sent them off, I signed off. And one of the managers asked, so what exactly have we been doing here for the last 2 days if the budgets have already been signed off? Shouldn't then the CFO become the chief strategy officer? Because if you can't resource for the market positions you want to play in, then that's the beginning of the end when it comes to how well you want to serve your strategy. And the last one is how much time do we spend as executives, as managers in service of our strategy conversations. And that's why I shared that piece, because that's when it all comes together, you realize only 10% of the organizations are really able to effectively execute their strategy, a really big point. So the pitfalls to strategy implementation are quite many, as I shared in that 1 in 10. There's quite a big piece around poor information flow and how data gets simplified, objectives get simplified as we go to different layers of the organization. And I'll share some examples of how Uganda Brewers has tried to unpack that. There are definitely issues around poor coordination of priorities, mostly within a group setting. Remember the dynamic picture I shared with you at the start. You have global functions, shared services, you have your regulators, you have your industry associations, you have your parent company, EABL, Diageo, you have quite a few. You have your partner markets where you're importing, exporting, and they're all running with their priorities. When you bring that into a single entity called UBL, if you do not have proper prioritization and air cover to be able to say, listen, we hear all that, but these are essentially going to be our focus points, and you don't cascade that enough down the line, I can tell you, you will be frenzied, you will be all over the place, and your strategy will fail. In fact, if anything, you will be in paralysis. So while you deal with all those internal dynamics, how do you ensure that you, as management, you're providing sufficient air cover from all these stakeholders to ensure that you remain very lip tight around 2 or 3 priorities per year? And hear me saying this, 2 or 3 priorities per year, nothing more, while you have all those stakeholders. There's a big piece around operational efficiency and growing the execution muscle, because remember, again, as much as you're part of the management team, the execution is done by your teams. How they execute that and how they build the muscle is going to be very important. There's also a big piece around underestimating time. We never really plan for the unexpected. And we all know, Mike Tyson says this, your plans only survive 2 seconds in battle. Yeah. The great Sun Tzu also spoke to the same thing. And the big piece there is always be patient and persistent when it comes to your strategies. Don't give in at the first point of collapse in terms of strategy. But now I want us to talk to the last 2 points, which are very important. creating fit and effective coordination within the group context. Now, creating fit is something that we really struggle with. As you saw, when I shared the Guinness example just a few slides earlier, we had a very clear mission and vision. We had a very clear business objective. And then you had these strategic pillars. Now, remember, building strategy is not about one competitive position. So even if I made the best Guinness in the world through my supply team, I still need the best marketing plans to connect with the culture set of our consumers. I still need the best sales organization to execute and distribute the beer to the last mile. I still need the best agricultural team to get me the best cereals in the land to make the best quality. All of us have to come in. And therefore, that process of creating fit and standards and prioritizing and resourcing up appropriately is one of the toughest things that management teams struggle with. And sometimes we tend to pick one objective and drop it and pick another and drop it and pick, whilst you need to focus on a few things and create the fit throughout the organization and not just in one area, because one area is never good enough. And then after that, you need to effectively coordinate it. And I'll talk about coordination mechanisms as we do them in UBI. But as I've seen, in the various countries I've lived and worked within Africa, what have been best practices around coordination and what hasn't. But this takes away. And these are some real examples of what really hinders from proper strategy implementation. So I just want to share two parts there. Yeah. And as Olive was speaking, the board has gone out with management. They have discussed the strategy and they have said, now let us pass it over to the division heads versus the new current reality. The new current reality is that we all have responsibility to the frontline execution. I get very encouraged when my board chairman, Jafet Kato, sends an email and says, or a text message and says, oh, I was in this outlet and I saw that they didn't have bell. What is happening in this part of the country? Because we all have a responsibility, even if you're the board chairman, even if you're the board, even if you're management, even if you're HR, to ensure that we hold true to the standards of execution that we signed off in the boardroom in line with our strategy. And this is the new norm. It's no longer about passing it over to the division heads. It's about we all have a responsibility in sticking it out to the front line. And therefore, today, if you didn't get any other principle, is how will you shift everyone's time, objective, including your CEO, to spend at least 20% of their time with the front line, understanding it, unpacking it, and really seeing how strategy is coming alive. So in closing this section around strategy implementation, because that's the section we've been going through, at the end of the day, one of the tools that has really helped us with prioritization has been being able to come up with an initiatives heat map that allows you to be able to prioritize, have a very clear vision around which initiatives will work, supporting which strategic pillars, and be able to sequence to deliver impact and value, both for short-term and long-term. So I like telling many organizations who I come to speak to and share time with, that if your strategy implementation process does not conclude with an initiatives heat map that allows you to prioritize what will give you the biggest impact and unlock the most value with the greatest ease, then really your planning process, your strategy process is really just guesswork. And you're hoping that you try 10 things and 2 or 3 will convert. So an initiative heat map really does tend to ground your implementation. But for me, more so, is with this initiative heat map, I am then able to manage my various stakeholders to appreciate that these are the things we're going to do first. And I know you have your objectives as Diageo, you have your objectives as Diageo Africa, you have your objectives as EABL, you have your objectives as URA. But this is what I think will add the most value to this ecosystem and make us celebrate life and grow Uganda at the same time. So I want to move to the second part of our presentation very quickly. And the second part speaks very quickly to what are the advantages of really executing within a group setting? The biggest piece to me, and you look at the heading, the way it reads is, trying to implement and align within a group context. Actually, there's quite a bit that comes from a group setting. That is a big edge compared to companies that are playing standalone. You have platforms and systems you can borrow from and learn. You have best practice sharing, your markets you can leverage and lean on. You're able to prioritize and align. Sometimes, because of all the things that are coming through, you can get support in terms of prioritization and resourcing. You also that we launched Back to Bar as Uganda Breweries. Those funds didn't come from Uganda Breweries. They came from the global company, empowering company, to enable us support the business of bars. So prioritization and resourcing, very important. You're able to leverage partnerships. What can I get from my peer and partner Kenya breweries? What can I get from Tanzania breweries? Where can we exchange, whether it's talent, whether it's where can we leverage each other, whether it's practices, so on and so forth. But the most important is you're able to have persistence, staying power. The fact that you exist within a group setting means you can be more patient with strategy, you can be more patient with implementation, and allow yourself to play the long game and not the short game. So big wins, it's not all bad news executing. And these are just some examples. You can have a great ERP, you can have an amazing learning hub, you have shared services that are sharing with you and supporting transactionally. There's talent mobility that you can tap and ensure you enrich. Right now, we have about 17 Ugandans out there in the diaspora, all getting different experiences. 2 of them GMs of big markets, and we've only brought in about 5 expatriates from different parts of the market. So amazing platform. And then you have our brands, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, standing on the shoulders of giants. So there are benefits to being in a group setting, and I'm just sharing some of them. How do you leverage these benefits? Similarly, you have approaches. You don't need to think too much. Many companies spend a lot in research, in getting tools. You can borrow from approaches that have worked, in understanding the market culture, understanding the consumer shopper marketing, portfolio, key channels, and how to play particular strategies dependent on the season you are in. You do not need to rethink some elements of strategy. And sometimes you borrow tools and you execute. You understand when to accelerate, you understand when to incubate, you understand when to optimize, because there are those who've gone before you, but at the same time, you're also a leading example for other countries that are coming behind you. And you're able then to look at how do I get to my consumers with the right infrastructure while backed by the right opportunities. So that level of think tank is very well born by group settings and in driving our strategy and tools in a very easier way. And therefore, as we speak to this piece, I must then speak to what then really drives alignment within a group context. The first piece is around information flow and simplifying strategy to the various levels of the organization. And I'll share some examples later on. The second piece is around having clear decision rights. Yes, know what you as the market have and where you make a particular call. Know where you need support of global functions, know where you need support of your board, know where you need support of your parent companies, and know very clearly who recommends that part of the strategy, who agrees to it, who performs it, who are the actors within your ecosystem that perform and execute it, the cross-functional teams, who gives input, who decides. When you have a clear, rapid model, then you don't struggle too much around implementation. Everyone takes their place. And that's something I've really come to enjoy within Diageo. Then there's a most important piece. How do we leverage middle management? Many times, again, as Olive covered, the board goes away with the management. They have a very big meeting. They discuss very many flowery things. They come and say, okay, now it's time to implement. However, if you do not get to the soul of the middle management, if you don't get to appreciate this layer called the middle management that connects to the front line and make them unpack and understand the strategy, it's all gone. Because they are the people in the ecosystem that have your social capital, they have your reputational capital, but also will bring the adaptability muscle in how you execute strategy. Some things will not work, but if they have the freedom, if they have the ownership, if they're empowered, they will adapt it to make it work without it really having come from the management. The fourth piece, and I've talked about it, is how do you sequence your priorities, but as management, as senior leaders in your organizations, how do you provide air cover to ensure that the organization is only focusing on a few priorities at a given time? So you have to have the hard conversations. How do you have a common performance framework, read everything from the same lens, whether it's talking to URA, whether it's talking to industry associations, whether it's talking to a group, whether it's conversing with the parent company? How do you have the same performance framework? Uganda Breweries right now works with 45,000 farmers, pays 41 billion. That narrative is consistent across all our various stakeholders. We are at 92% of local content in terms of local sourcing. And all this is anchored by the board of directors in providing that connection between a group setting and a group context and a subsidiary. If they understand and buy into your strategy, they become your ambassadors in other platforms, in other spaces, as you develop and execute, as you develop your execution muscle. So alignment is important, and these are really some of the key pillars that drive us there. So when we talk about strategy going to the next level, it's about creating local purpose and local connection. You must interpret what is that Guinness narrative into a very local narrative. If you don't do that, you struggle. It's about amplifying your communication through multiple platforms, and I'll talk to that briefly. It's about functioning as teams and not silos. It's about progress, not perfection. And when I talk about progress, not perfection, it's really around making mistakes, allowing for mistakes, and picking yourselves up as you execute. It is about staying close to the terrain. You saw all those executives in the dugouts really close to the terrain, and it is all about speed and pace, as we've learned in this season. And therefore, for us, using Uganda Breweries example, we called ourselves the radicals. And in every season, we challenged status quo. We gave ourselves acronyms of what will define how we execute. We talked about momentum, simplicity, and productivity. Listen now, I'm not giving out, oh, we need to get to X market share. I'm not talking about, oh, we need to, I have simplified it to say it's all about MSP. It's a short code. And once it's about MSP, that's all we do. Then we share stories about each other. We talk about, well, who are you as a brewmate? And this is around bringing together that middle management, igniting that middle management to tell their story, to tell how they are part of strategy, to give their narrative. Not you, the exco, not you, the board, the middle management, owning the strategy and extending that story. It's about visualizing your performance, and I talk about multiple communication platforms, sharing it with trackers daily, weekly, monthly, so that everyone knows against the things that we set out, where are we? It is about giving your employees a voice. We have chimezas in Uganda Breweries, we have employee council, we have various means by which we recognize people. And then we do it in sprints. We do challenges, you unpack it. And as the individuals and the employees do all this, what really happens? You're not telling them that they're executing strategy. You're not telling them, oh, the vision is this. No, you're telling them, we have a 99-day challenge. How shall we show up? You tell them, it's all about MSP. How do we show up? You tell them, tell me about your radical story as a brewmate in this great business of ours. Oh, come to Achimeza and tell us about how your team is doing. And as you do all this, you recognize on the spot, you recognize monthly, you recognize full year winners, and you recognize quarterly, but you recognize teams, not individuals. You recognize teams. So the execution of strategy, at the heart of it, is how do you bring back the soul? How do you inject the spirit? Because that is where the battle is won or lost. I know we like talking about culture, it's strategy for breakfast, but this is where it's all. And you can see the two men on the side springing themselves beyond what we thought was measured because they're ignited to become radicals. And that becomes a symbol for the business. So I want us to close off with talking about this great gentleman. His name is Nav Bhatia. He's been on social media in the last 1 week, and he's a super fan. He went into India, into Canada in mid-80s, 1984. As long stories would go, as an immigrant, he had a very tough time in the first 11 years, tried doing odd jobs before settling down as a car salesman. Later on became general manager of the same business, and is now more or less a capitalist, an industrialist, owns 27 car dealerships, and has really been a symbol of progress for many of us as we looked at this story. And for me, as I shared this narrative, the story here is not about how well he moved from odd jobs and being a mechanical engineer, living in India and settling to a foreign country, because we have many of those narratives. For me, is how he's driven his identity as a super fan and led and been passionate about this team where he's Raptors, where he's a super fan, and what is meant for the players. And you can see the players signing on his back, what is meant amongst the various fans, and how he's learned to lead from outside in. As various managers in your businesses today or in various entities today, do you look at your business as a customer? If you own an outlet chain, do you go into that business and experience how your customers are getting service? Many of us, you go to a shop and you say, it was management in this place, I would actually change this. Why do they have long queues here? They need to change that and all that. And you walk away. Of course, you don't give that feedback to the management, but I'm sure the management will never know what is really happening. How do we wear an outside-in view to organizations? Because that begins the story of how we convert to driving strategy and strategy implementation. Many of us are leading organizations from inside out and not wearing the shoes of being the customer. Many of us are not close to the battle lines and close to the fields to really understand and get feedback. And many of us in that regard are then not evolving our identities beyond what they are right now. You're allowing that seat called CEO or management or board chairman to define how you truly can add value to this great organization that you serve. Here is Nav Bhatia, who has simply been a super fan in driving the Raptors agenda and in driving the game of sport in Canada. I ask all of you to read about that story. And in that, he became the first fan to be inducted in the Basketball Hall of Fame, together with the late Kobe Bryant and many others in 2020. Imagine being the best customer to your own business and wearing that lens in how you lead the organization. And therefore, as I bring this to a close, I want to ask all of you to embrace what makes you different, because that is your superpower and that's your armor as you execute within a group context and implement your strategies. Thank you very much.
Wow, wow, wow. Great presentation from Alvin. I'm sure all of you agree with me that you have really nailed it. And I want to thank you very much, Alvin. I'm sure I'll get time to just call you to ask your board chair to even say a word. But I think for all of you, as you listened in, I think he started off by sharing a few things that have nothing to do with strategy. But when you go deeper and understand what he told us about himself, he said he's passionate about environment. And he came in and said, the youth, and we've had this debate, harnessing the youth population dividend for Africa. He's talked about where do we thrive? So the mountain, climbing Mountain Rwenzori, leaders taking a bit of risk. So as Alvin is presenting, you can see where his base begins from and where he's moving to. So Alvin, I think connecting that and putting them together, you've done us proud. As we wait, we have about 3 questions. First of all, we have only 20 minutes to go, but we also have 3 questions that will be asked. But I'll just wrap up a bit and say, he brought up a few things and said, what is not strategy? And as he spoke, I was thinking to myself, strategy is not the 5 days, those good days that boards always go out. It's not the mission, it's not the vision, it's not the financial. So when we finish the 5 days of strategic planning and formulation, and we go back as board members, and we come back for the next board meeting, where is implementation at that stage? So when he says his board chair, Japheth, once in a while goes to the trade and says, oh, there's no bill, I think that is implementation. So I think he has also unpacked and said, we need to build defenses against the competitive forces. I think all of us that are in the competitive environment, we know that the best bait that we need to focus on is the competitive forces, because that gives us sleepless nights. But where does the board come in? How does the board look at that? And I think he also unpacked one part where he said, you can actually be in this group context, but you must be local. If you remember, he said, when you look at the bigger part of GNS, you're looking at mental availability, innovation, physical availability. But when it comes to Uganda, Alvin and the team and the board, you have to look at what is the Ugandan context. Because for you to implement and succeed, the context must be well thought. So he brings in sustainability, capacity, culture. And I think you have been so practical in trying to unpack that. And what goes on in my head is that just 1 hour is not enough. If we sat and broke this topic and said, can we look at one stage at a time, I think we'll even come out bigger. So we will ask the board chair lead, I think Madame Gertrude, at an opportune time, maybe we'll have to come in again and share. Just also to look, he said, we only commit less than 1 hour a month is dedicated to strategic discussions. What does that mean? Out of 720 hours in a month, we only commit 1 hour. Do you know what that means? I just calculated the numbers. That means we need to go back and see 720 hours in a month, but we have only 1 hour. So which strategic implementation are we doing, and how do we expect to succeed? I think he's given us all this. He's given us several areas which we need to look at. But the final one, he said, what makes you different? Are you embracing? We need to embrace what makes us different. So I want to thank you very much. You've shared a lot. I know we'll look at the PowerPoint presentation, but you've raised our brains and thinking. And I think as we go into the questions time, which we are going to begin, I think we have about 20 minutes to close. I've given you a few minutes to breathe, Alvin, because after presenting for 45 minutes, definitely you need a breather in there. So I'll quickly go into the 3 questions that we had, but I'll ask Alvin, Ivan, I think we need to see some of the brands that Alvin is talking about. Perhaps we just needed 30 seconds to see those.
We all know those moments.
When it's yes, then no.
It's twist, then turn.
When we all have the feeling that anything could happen.
And it's almost as if
Time
Slows
down.
Guineas, everything is possible.
Thank you very much. I think that's a beautiful ad. Everything is possible. And I'll now go straight into the 3 questions. But just to let you know that when Alvin talked about loving the environment, as I participated with him, they are supporting our project, the Kampala North Rotary Club of Kampala North. And we traveled all the way to Bududa to just see the environment. And everybody was wondering, he traveled all these hours to go in there and make a difference in the community, and that community plants the sorghum, I'm sure, that makes the beer we enjoy.
They do.
So one of the questions that I have here, I'm thinking actually you've answered some of the questions as you presented, because one of the questions was from Kato Benedict. He said, what is the board of directors' strategic role in high-level strategy implementation?
Brilliant.
What is the board of directors' strategic role in high-level strategy implementation? And I must say, if I could reach Kato Benedict, I think you have unpacked that in your presentation, but feel free if you have 1 or 2 words to add. But if I look at the presentation, it comes out very, very, very clear. The other question, which comes in from Bamidele Olalekan Osen, I think from Nigeria, he says, according to Larry Bosney and Ram Charan in their book, The Discipline of Getting Things Done, what are the key nuggets or critical success factors that can assist the board of directors and management to achieve effective execution of strategy aspiration? And then the last one, it says, strong businesses are centers of social coordination. Economic value is only but one aspect of the role of the enterprise, and yet most are lost in what they call creating value for the shareholders. And usually this fails because they do not deliberately and authentically serve all stakeholders, and they do not in a mechanical corporate way, but in a deliberate way where parts of society benefit. So I have decided to read the 3 questions because I know they are interconnected and you have to them. So you wrap up the answer and then we'll have and then we'll continue with the program. But I thank you very much, Alvin.
Thank you, Olive, and you really captured my slides, so I can see you are being a very, very good student in that particular space. Let me deal with the first 2 questions, which is really around the board, the role of the board in driving strategy, and I covered it slightly when I was talking about alignment. But the real piece for the board is the first piece is really around understanding the organization, and I talked about the internal dynamics around Uganda Breweries, but also the value chain. Do your board members understand your relationship with farmers? Your board members understand your forward partners and your backward partners and what role they play? And how much time do you spend exposing the board to various aspects of your industry to really have a very deep understanding of your industry, to be able for them now to convert themselves into advisors? Sometimes we pick board members who are very good at particular areas, and of course they come with governance and they can speak very well on other elements. However, immersing them into your business is the first anchor to making them a superb advisor to the business. The second piece is having transparent and authentic dashboards, which have the right rigor and speak to the right performance indicators that can then really assist the board in understanding and differentiating what is noise and what is a real signal. Yeah, it doesn't matter if a brand goes down for a month, that doesn't mean we panic. It doesn't matter if performance blips for 2 months on something, we panic. If we understand what elements in the external environment are driving that, then that is just a bit of noise, it's not a signal. However, how do you amass and have the right trackers for the board to provide the right guidance? Then the third piece is around how you immerse your board into future thinking, future conversations, and orient them towards elements of the industries that you serve in that might change, so that essentially over time, they really come in and support you in anchoring the strategy and making the organization more future fit. Sometimes we find too many boards being swapped into the day-to-day. In fact, sometimes even duplicating what management do. That is not the role of the board. The role of the board is to really, 1, think around things that could be disruptors to the industry, around risk, but 2, bring in these future elements, talk about cultural norms that could really be disruptors or enablers to the business. The last piece, and where we are starting to do that a bit more, and I can see LEAD is taking a very good role in that space, is how do your boards drive the agenda on softer issues of sustainability, diversity and inclusion. I mean, a lot of the boards now are trying to bring in more, younger members to drive in elements around digitization and driving that capability and infusing that through the organization. The board can always be and will always be an ambassador of the business, but they start by walking the talk around these softer elements of culture that they want the rest of the organization to resemble and fortify. Then the last piece around, the last question around short-term, the sustainability piece versus driving, shareholder value. I think I wanna answer it in a very simple way. It's a very good question. The real race in the current era of driving organizations is really around sustainability. We are all in the race for sustainability. To what extent do you have the right governance practices? To what extent do you have the right social footprint? Yeah, is your business ingrained in the social fabric of the community you operate in? Do you speak to their culture? Do you engage that consumer? The more entrenched you are to the social fabric of a community, the better your survival. And then the last piece is about what is your customer value chain proposition and story. So we always talk about the SDG factors, and there's a lot of discussions right now around sustainability indices, etc. The real answer to delivering long-term shareholder value is really answered in the question around how sustainable are you and what levers are you inputting into your business every single day to make you more sustainable. For example, in Uganda breweries, back in 2006, only 1% of what we locally sourced, of all the raw materials and inputs that we need, we only used 1% in Uganda. We had to import 99%. Fast forward to last year, and this is how we survived the pandemic, 92% of everything we need to make Bell, Guinness, Uganda Waraji is sourced in Uganda. We are sustainable. We have all our suppliers within this footprint, which means my ability to survive different seasons or phases as a business is better. And I didn't have that capability. I had to go look for partners who didn't have that capability. And we built it together by me sharing my standards and saying how we do it and ensuring that as a business, you become part of the ecosystem every single day.
Thank you very much, Alvin. I think for answering those, I have two more questions for you. Interesting one. You have touched on one already, but one says, Alvin, I wonder how the strategies put in place in UBL have helped you to cope with the unprecedented challenges like the one posed by COVID-19. And as you were ending this answering, I think you touched on that. The other one, which comes in from Robin Chibuka, says, excellent presentation, Alvin. While there are advantages to being part of a group, there are also disadvantages. So how do you address some of these through creating local purpose and connection? We'll only take those two questions as the last questions, and then because we need to conclude within the next 10 minutes. So
Brilliant.
Over to you. Thank you.
I'll take them in. Very good. Thank you very much. So let me start off with what we might call the limitations of sometimes being within a group context. And I call it limitations, not really disadvantages, because I only see the advantages, is the ability for you to orchestrate the priorities for the business and provide a sufficient level of air cover for the business to ensure that your team works with few priorities and are focused in any single season. Now, what is important there is something we call orchestrating for impact. You must look at your various stakeholder sets and be able to sell your story. Now, I have my board of directors. What are my 3 priorities? I go to them. I have my regional leadership team, both at EABL and Diageo. What are my 3 priorities? I go to them. Now, many of us, when it comes to the beginning of the year, you're still looking around waiting for objectives to come from group and other places for them to become your priorities. Why are you not spending your last quarter of the year planning what will be your priorities, not what their priorities are, what will be your priorities, and how you will package that narrative for them to own your priorities and support you. And I think we need to start wearing the mindset of all these other layers, global functions, subsidiaries, industry associations, etc., are there in service of your priorities together with your management team. If only you take the time to understand what do I need to feed to whichever stakeholder set so that I am meeting them halfway in addressing their priority as I meet my priority. Many of us never plan with that in mind, and you're caught halfway because you've not done your own thinking about what your priorities are. You're caught halfway driving other people's agendas because really you've not taken time to package, to marshal, and sell your priorities for the benefit of the whole. So that really is a very, very big one. The second piece that is important, and all of you talk to it, is how do you navigate these seasons? We've had COVID-19. We might, don't know whether we're going to a lockdown or not. But the big conversation here is, and we are seeing many other organizations talk about this. I think high time we thought about our organization as a group of teams with different complementary skills, and a group of individuals with various passion points beyond what they do on their BAU. Because the real task of leadership in any organization is how do you tap that 13th person in any team, and how do you tap your employees to give you more than 100%, to give you what they would give you normally 8 to 5. To do that, you really then need to ensure you provide a platform where people can bring their passion points and work more in teams. So for us, we have something called the organization marketplace, where people put up various assignments, whatever projects they're thinking about, and people go in there and they apply to be part of those teams. Yeah, you could be in engineering, but you're part of the culture transformation team. You could be in innovations, but you're part of the business control team. Wherever your interest lies, I have a platform for you to grow. You must provide platforms where your employees can demonstrate and come and bring their skills beyond what you hired them to do. That is the new feature. And if you talk about the Gen Zs are not being defined by their degrees. They're not being defined by where they went to school to or financial independence. They're being defined by what kind of impact they can bring to the marketplace. So all you have to do is exist in service of providing platforms for them to deliver impact. And I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alvin. I also got in a few questions, but the person who sent them said, I'll share them with you on mail. And then when you give answers, we'll share them with all members of LEAD because they are very, very interesting questions. Allow me quickly to invite the chairman of the board of directors, Mr. Japheth Kato, just for a minute to hear his voice, knowing that he's the man behind such a great presenter. And then thereafter, we'll have the chair of LEAD, Madame Gertrude Karugaba, to come in and close this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Japheth Kato, you have the seat. Thank you.
Am I unmuted, Ivan?
Now we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Yes. Olive, thank you very much for the opportunity. I know that there is no free lunch or free bell beer, but I was not going to speak. But thank you very much, Olive, for your kind words at the beginning, and Alvin for referring to me. I think this is a great presentation. And thank you, Alvin, for being very candid and very transparent. I was beginning to wonder whether some of those items you were showing there, whether there's somebody in a different location looking at them. But I think transparency also is very, very critical. But I really would like to thank LEAD. When I was approached, I thought it was all in confidence to suggest a name. I did suggest Alvin, and he has done us proud. And thank you very much for excellent chairing, Olive and team and Gertrude chair. This for LEAD really is a great thing. And I think LEAD is going strength to strength. But I'm very proud that Alvin has presented a true picture of what happens in the organization, and even gone further to elaborate on the group structures and so on. So very proud of the presentation, very proud of LEAD, and very proud of all of you who have joined in. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Great, and God bless you. And please, take care. Things are tough. Thank you. God bless. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the chair, Japheth. I'll now invite the chairperson of LEAD, Gertrude, to wind up. this session.
Okay. Wow, what an afternoon. First to Olive, thank you for being a fantastic moderator. As Alvin said, you were very attentive. You prepared before, you listened during, and you've given us a wonderful summary. Thank you so much, Olive, for taking your time this afternoon. You look elegant. You were chiding Alvin at the beginning that he's all dressed up on a Friday, but you are not doing too badly yourself. So thank you so much for giving us of your time. Alvin, it's been superb. Alvin has gone off the screen. I wanted to look at him. Alvin, thank you, first of all, for your candor. You've been very candid, speaking into senior management, speaking into the board, and challenging us as board members around the role we need to play and how we need to allow management to do the work that they need to do on implementation. Thank you also for that first slide, when you said what strategy is not, because many of us, we focus on market share, we focus on PBT, and we say that's our strategy, in one slide. But thank you so much for challenging us on that. Thank you, Japheth, as Alvin is on the screen, as a board chair to a CEO, thank you for teaching us a dynamic this afternoon. The board chair is very proud of the CEO, and he's not proud quietly. I think as a board chair, as a director, it's important to give your CEO all the support, not to just throw in a name, but to participate in the session and to commend him. So Japheth and Alvin, we have learned an unintended lesson from this afternoon. I think there are many questions, Alvin, and of course we didn't have time, but that challenge or the tension between how you optimize the group relationship, what are the benefits, what are the opportunities, but how do you balance that off with the challenges? How do you move from a relationship of subservience because and sometimes you're not as big a subsidiary. So how do you elevate your relevance within the group? How do you add value? How do you influence? But how do you stay in touch with the environment in which you operate? So thank you so much, Alvin. It's been superb. I have thoroughly enjoyed this afternoon, the combination of you and Olive. Thank you, Ivan, for coordinating everything. Thank you for the opening remarks. Thank you, Japheth, for the lead into Alvin, and thank you for the remarks that you have made. I just want to thank all our members for the confidence. Thank you for showing up. As Ivan said, we are celebrating 2 years since the official launch of LEAD. Thank you for the partnership, UBL. You gave us Alvin to speak, but you've supported us in other ways as well. And I know that we are going to continue benefiting from that. Olive, I know you're pursuing very interesting opportunities. So best wishes from all of us at LEAD to you. And I just want to wish everyone a safe weekend. The COVID situation, I think as Japheth has touched on, it's getting very, very worrying. And I pray that all of us will remain safe, that our families will be safe, but that we'll be able to find ways around the COVID situation for our businesses to continue to thrive. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Questions are coming.
Since 1946, Uganda Breweries has passionately brought Ugandans together in the wonderful spirit of progress and celebration. A shared masterpiece of heritage produced by the soil and sustained by our belief in a better tomorrow. From creating the first taste truly cherished by Uganda, to changing with the times and bringing you many firsts. From giving nature millions of reasons to smile, to being there for a million joyful moments that we've all shared in. From championing the spirit of hope when it mattered the most, to supporting the champions who continue to inspire us. we invite you to take a front row seat in our story, 75 years in the making. A journey that without you would have never been worth undertaking. A journey of excellence and innovation, not created by any one individual, but a journey brewed by Uganda.
It doesn't matter where we are. Or what we have. We keep the good times flowing. Be it outdoors,
that's how we do it.
Or even in the wild. We bring it wherever we go because space doesn't determine our expression. Our moments are golden, timeless, and enjoyed in Mpola Mpola. Because Mpola Enjoyments is about our crew, our vibe, and our beer. Mpola Enjoyments. It's a Bell Lager thing.